Yeah.
ASMR spooky sips.
Oh.
Oh my God, yes, I'll get my nails done.
Yes. Spooky sip.
It's been a while. Let me pull up our intro.
We're out of practice.
We've literally done 25 of these. Can you just give me a minute?
But it's been a while. Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready. Professional. I'm not going to look at you guys. For some reason, that helps.
You just close your eyes.
Yeah. Hello, and welcome to Spooky Sips, where we put our love of horror movies into a podcast and sip some spirits along the way. I'm one of your hosts, Yvette, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Laura and Brianna.
Hello.
Hey. All right, we just got finished. Whoa. Hang on. I forgot how to do this too.
We just got done.
We're all done.
Okay, let's try that again.
It got done it.
Let's try that again, shall we? All right, so we just finished watching the 2016 movie Hush. This movie is about a deaf and mute writer who secludes herself to the woods. She lives there with her cat, and basically it's a normal evening, and all of a sudden a masked killer shows up, and a chase ensues. Dun, dun, dun.
This movie is so good. It's one of my favorites.
So I had only seen this once before, and I forgot how good this movie was.
Mm-hmm.
I was literally like, my fists were tensed up the entire movie.
No,
you know how they say
the
edge
anxiety.
of your...
Yeah, the anxiety I felt during this movie.
Yeah. No, same. I totally forgot because I'm the same as you, Brianna. I've only seen it once, and such a good movie. And I can't believe I forgot how good it was.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so good.
I will say, though, I'm sorry to anyone who hears this and then goes and rewatches it or tries to find it, because it is really hard to find right now.
It is very hard to find.
So apparently what happened is Netflix acquired this movie. So it's not a Netflix original, but that's where I saw it. That's where it was for years. And the contract just ended. The deal that they had with this director just ended. And so they had to take it off of Netflix. And so the director has talked about either moving it somewhere else or even releasing like physical copies of it, like releasing it on DVD and stuff. But it was on Netflix. They took it off. And so now it's really hard to find, which is kind of interesting to think about, just how many movies that only had digital releases are just gone.
Yeah.
You know, because I think every other movie we've done, I've been able to find the DVD. You know, my favorite DVD rental place, I can just go get all the bloopers and stuff. But this was the first one that didn't have it because they never made a DVD of it.
That's so bizarre. I mean, that's probably eventually going to be what everything is.
Yeah, like just lives in the ether.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that so crazy? Because how many, I mean, I remember even just like being a kid, right? And you just like get random movies, right? And like a garage sale. I mean, I feel like that's how I watched so many crappy horror movies when I was, you know, a teenager. It was like we would just go and then buy all like the shitty horror movie DVDs and watch them.
No, exactly. Or you like go to the movie store and just, you know, peruse the aisle and pick which one you think sounds good. Like,
so now it's like
Blockbuster.
It's like even though you know what movie you're looking for, it was like, no, because it was all digital. It's gone.
Yeah, I know, which is really a shame because it's so good.
It's so good. And it'll be back. I think the director is actively working. I think there was even talks of like selling it to Amazon or something. So it'll be back in some way or another. But I feel like we just got like caught in the random few months where it just isn't available everywhere, which I don't know, just interesting thing to think about.
Yeah. Well, maybe with our large fan base, the demand for this movie will be so great that they realize they need to bring it back immediately.
It'll be trending.
I don't know if either of you have noticed or if our fans have noticed, but lately on Netflix, every time we do a movie, it's now suddenly available on Netflix a few weeks later. Like so many of the movies that we've done are now on Netflix. So Netflix, if you're listening, sign us up for a deal anytime. we're
anytime.
available.
If you guys need like recommendations, reviews, just like whatever, we're here.
Yep.
Hit us up. We got it. We got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this movie, part of the reason that I love it is that I love the main actress, Kate Siegel, I think is how you say it. And she's actually the director's wife, which I think is cute because he also did House on Haunted Hill and she's in that. But I love this actress. So for me, that's a big part of like what makes the movie so phenomenal.
Yeah.
And like I know that there was a lot of beef that they did not use a deaf actress. Totally respect and understand that. Like they should. And hopefully like moving forward, more movies do that sort of inclusion. But I have to say, like, she nails the character.
Yeah, she does a good job.
Yeah. And I do know. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I have my theory as to why they didn't also cast a deaf actress. And we'll talk about this as the movie goes on, but she has a voice in her head that is her voice. And that would have been almost a little harder to do, or it just, not disingenuous, but it wouldn't have seemed as natural for that to have been a deaf actress who never used their voice. It would be unusual.
Yeah,
agreed.
I think so. I feel like that it actually makes sense in this specific case as to why a hearing actress made sense.
Yeah. Okay. I have 2 fun facts for you guys that'll kind of addresses both of those. So originally we already mentioned, she co-wrote the movie. And I think the main reason was just budgetary. When you're trying to limit budget, it's like, why not become one of the actors in the movie? They did come out and say that they absolutely do regret it and see why so many people believe correctly that it should have been a deaf actress. And they said, there's no excuse. And they also can't do anything about it now. But in the future, they absolutely agree with it. It is a regret that they have. I think it's still a great movie. They did bring in a consultant to not only teach like ASL to all of the actors that had to use it, but also to vet the script. And the biggest change that the consultant recommended was changing Maddie's character from being born deaf, which was the original script, to being latent deaf to help kind of guide the voice inside the head wouldn't make sense otherwise. And also they thought that would make it easier for Siegel to play the role than having someone who was supposed to have been born deaf.
Right.
So, yeah, that totally makes sense.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect because we'll get into, when we get into Psych, why that makes even more sense for her. So yeah, that's perfect.
I'm excited for Psych.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, the movie is, I think, one of my favorite things. It is so fast paced.
It is.
So, I mean, I feel like we could just dive into the deaths because that's what the movie does.
Well, and that was the first note that I wrote down was like, this first kill is such an epic moment that like it should be in the like Hall of Fame of horror movies as a kill. That's because so just the way that she is essentially, Maddie is essentially in front of, and I use that in air quotes, the murder happening is brilliant. And the way that they execute it is brilliant.
Yeah. Because it just comes out of nowhere.
Oh, totally. Yeah, there's only like, I don't remember exactly what time this happened, but there's about like 10 minutes of there's always got to be horror movie setup. Yeah. So 10 minutes of just, happy, normal life, introducing like that she's a writer. She has a friend who's learning ASL. And then boom, it happens.
Yep.
So yeah. So we have Maddie's friend, Sarah, who has previously come over to the house. They're chit-chatting. Maddie's, kind of like sharing her book.
Yeah, she wrote a book.
Yeah.
With Sarah. And then I think Maddie is just like a terrible cook. So she's in her kitchen. They were going to eat dinner, but it ended up being terrible. So she's like cleaning up the disaster of dinner. So she's in the kitchen and she's got in the house that she lives in. So we should say she lives in this beautiful house that's kind of secluded in the woods. It's so gorgeous. Like, I want to go vacation there.
It's all windows and doors, though.
But then the first floor is all windows and doors, so you can just see out, but also you can really see in. And then Bloody Sarah just gets like slammed up against the door and is just screaming, Maddie, Maddie, please see me. As she's being like shot.
Or stabbed.
I think first it's shot with the crossbow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then he comes up.
The knife.
Stabs
it's like
her.
Walking Dead style crossbow that like the assailant like goes and gets her, and then he comes up and he's just stabbing her, like pounding her up against the glass wall.
And just the sound of her being stabbed repeatedly is so squishy and gross.
Yeah, it's such an overkill. Like I didn't count, but it was so many times that he stabs her.
And then to see like his realization that she is deaf unravel is, I think, a really cool moment. Like he's, killed her and he is standing at the window being like, why didn't this girl turn around? And he just like lightly taps on the glass. Oh, love it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Should we talk about how Maddie learns that the guy is there?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, imagine being so unparanoid that you don't look out your window every 5 seconds.
Right.
Like, I live like 3 stories up and I still kind of check the deck, like I still need to know what's going on outside.
Right.
Imagine just not looking out.
No.
And second, if I'm ever FaceTiming you guys and you see something move in the background, just
call 911. Yeah.
Just 911.
Immediately. It's probably just Matthew, but who cares?
It doesn't matter.
Right away.
Yeah.
Except when you have a cat, though, like she does, I can see where they say it's just the cat.
Like, yes and no. Like cat this big.
Yeah.
Right. Human sized. They make different movements.
I did have a spooky thing happen outside of my house a couple of days ago. So we have a detached garage where you can see there's the garage door that the cars go in and out, but there's also a little side door, and that goes into our backyard that is fully fenced. So Jaden and I 2 days before had unloaded from camping, and so I know we had been using that door, but my husband, who is very careful about everything all the time, I love him.
That's an understatement.
We all love him.
I'm pretty sure he was the last one to use the door, and so we know for a fact, like, he would have locked it and shut it.
Yeah. Because it latches, right? That door? Like, it has like a latch, right?
It doesn't have a latch. It's just, it's actually a really crappy door and a crappy lock. Like, it
okay.
I hate it. It doesn't, and the door itself, like, I feel like I can't pick locks, but I'd be able to figure out how to.
Okay, yeah.
But so a couple nights ago, we look outside and the door's open. So we were like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So what I did first is I opened the main door that the cars go in and out of, because that turns on
nice.
in the garage. I was like, well, if they're in there, we're going to scare them out. Give it a second. And then we went in. But here's the thing. Nothing was taken. And we have bikes in there. We have, not a ton of stuff that's worth money.
The garage stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So nothing was taken. So I'm almost thinking either A, it didn't actually fully shut all the way and like the wind knocked it, but it wasn't windy. Or B, someone like tested it, realized that they could get in.
Oh, yeah.
And saw the stuff and was like, oh, let's go. I'm going to go get my buddy or like something carry this stuff and we'll come right back.
Yeah.
So we now have a padlock on there and a new lock.
Nice. That's good. Oh, wait, don't you have a camera?
So we do have a camera, but it gets the porch and the door to the house.
Oh, no.
It slightly misses the garage. So, and we have one that would get the garage door, the main door, but not that little side door.
Damn it. Blind spot.
Anyway, it made me think of it, because like stuff going on outside your house that you don't realize, and then you look outside and you see something's amiss. It's freaky.
It's terrifying.
It's a freaky feeling.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway. Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, she's on the call. Sister says she saw something, so she lets her go.
Oh, yeah.
And then
sister saw it, and then Maddie goes, oh, no, it was just the cat. So Maddie has a cat whose name is Bitch. So she was like, oh, that's just Bitch. Like, she escaped earlier. I love that that's the cat's official name.
It's also like the cutest cat just ever.
So fluffy.
It's such a cute, fluffy cat.
Yeah.
And then I think while she's just writing, or maybe she goes and does something, he comes in and takes her phone. And then he lets her know that that he's there because he sends her pictures of herself through like iMessage. So they pop up on her laptop.
Yep.
What do you do at that point?
Here's my biggest beef with this movie.
Okay.
Because he sends like 5.
Yeah.
So he sends ones from earlier to show that he's been watching for a while. And then he sends her one just right in that moment. But the very first one, I would have iMessaged 911.
Yeah.
Like the very first message.
Oh,
no fucking around. Like never in a horror movie situation, because this is always in the slasher film, it is always when they go to investigate that shit goes down. Do not investigate. Your first thing is to call 911.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. It's like monkey brain, where it's just like, oh, what's happening? I should go check. I can't help but wonder how I would actually react. And I know like exactly. I'd be investigate person.
But I feel like I've watched enough that and analyzed enough movies that hopefully my brain has rewired itself to be like, do the right thing, call 911.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Because I don't think there's a lot of moments in this where she isn't very smart and actually thinking about stuff.
Exactly.
But I do think you're right. I think this is kind of maybe one of the few, if not only, moments where maybe she could have done something.
I agree, because actually I didn't have any other moments in the whole movie where I was like, what are you thinking? All the rest I agreed with, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's just hard to know, because I feel like again with the garage, I wouldn't have investigated.
Right?
Oops.
No.
Yes.
But yeah, when she goes to investigate, then she sees him the way he stands outside, like I think he's on her porch. She sees him through the glass door, and he's just standing there holding her phone, showing her, like he's got like his crossbow and he's got the phone, and he's just looking at her with that creepy mask, and oh my gosh, horrifying.
Yes. Just so scary.
Yeah.
The tension in this movie is felt the entire rest of the movie. Like the minute it starts, it's there until it's done, I feel like.
Yeah, it just keeps going.
Yeah.
And then I think he gets kind of right to it, right? He goes and because I think at this point she realizes, oh, I need to call 911, right? Runs to her laptop. He disconnects the power, which turns off the internet. And then he goes and slashes her tires.
Yep.
So just right at the beginning, it's like, okay, not only are you in the cabin in the woods, but you're screwed.
Yeah.
You have they kind of set it up. Yeah.
Yeah. You have no phone, you have no internet. She even show she tries to connect to her friend's Wi-Fi. But he then also tries to do that through her phone and sees there's a password. And he's like, oh well, you don't know the password.
Right.
Yep.
So it's instantly just like, well shit.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm screwed.
Yeah. Like, what do you do?
Yeah. And also at one point when he's like starting the threats to her, he does where he puts the knife to the glass and like the sound of this big butcher knife like scraping the glass was just horrific.
Agreed.
Yeah. And I still am thinking about it and I can't.
Yeah. So she tries I forget if this is before or after he threatens her, where she then tries to write a message on the door.
This is right after the knife thing.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, clearly there's a problem here. And I think this is her like, let's try to reason with him, right?
Yep.
Like, I didn't see you, like, didn't see face, boyfriend coming home. Right? So then it's like, oh, maybe this will be enough to make him go away, which again, I kind of a smart move.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, hey,
try to bargain
now, we're going to be all good.
Because at this point, I don't think she's seen that he has killed her friend.
No.
He just knows that he is threatening, or she just knows that he's threatening her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now at this point, he takes his mask off. And the moment that happened, you're like, all right, it's over. Like,
he means business.
Here's what we're in for. And he asks if she can read lips, which she can. And he tells her, like, I heard you talking to your sister. I know that you live alone.
Yeah.
Like,
he repeats what her sister said.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He calls her the little nickname too, even just in a more private home.
Yeah, Squish.
Yeah, Squish.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. What did you guys think of the guy? I don't think we actually get a name for him. I think he's just like the man.
I guess we
in
don't
the credits. Yeah, I think we don't really get to know. What did you guys think of? Because I saw, like, I tried to look the movies up online just to see kind of what other people are saying, and I feel like some people were like disappointed in what he looked like and revealing his face so early. But do you guys have any thoughts?
I think it was brilliant because we learn later that this is a thing he's been doing. Eventually, you see on his crossbow, he's got 13 tally marks. So this is like a sport for him. So I think him showing his face right off the bat is brilliant because he's like, well, this is a definite. This is not a maybe I'll kill you. I will kill you. And just that. This guy thrives off of the threat, off of the fear, off of the screams of his victims. So he wants that panic. He wants that terror. But I also love that he was kind of like, small and like, average. I kind of like that. To me, that was even more terrifying. That he was just this average guy, not unattractive, and he's just there to just hunt you down.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that I love that he unmasked himself so early on. I think it's part of what like builds the tension.
Yeah.
So early, but the fact that they're able to maintain it the entire film, like that is wild. But they really are.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think there was no reason for him to keep the mask on. It wasn't, like a monster in other horror movies where it makes sense to not show it because it makes it scarier by not seeing it.
Right.
I agree where it's almost scarier to have him just be some guy. Like they gave him a neck tattoo.
Right.
Which I guess makes him a little scarier maybe. But like that's scarier that it's just some guy. Like he reveals his mask and it's like, I honestly don't know how I would describe this man.
Right.
Yeah, just typical
white man,
small white guy.
Yeah,
I don't know,
just a small white man.
Yeah,
right.
Kind of a round face. Did he have hair? I don't even know.
Right. So I agree. I actually think that it made a lot of sense to do it this way because it's scarier when you think about it. Yeah.
And so then he's kind of like chasing her around the house.
Yeah.
Like I wrote in my notes too, because I feel like it's like this like cat and mouse game. Like he goes to a window or she goes to a window, then he goes and he does the threats. But it is identical to how my cat hunts. Like playing with the thing that you're gonna murder, like pouncing on it from different angles, letting it get away, and then going up and pouncing again. It's identical to how like that would hunt a mouse.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
it's fair.
Yeah, very, very murdery.
Yeah.
But yeah, at one point I forget why a window was open. Oh.
To get the phone.
Yeah. So he goes to taunt her again, and you hear this knocking on this bedroom window. So she's barricaded herself in a bedroom. And you hear this knocking on the window that she's nearby, and it turns out it's her friend Sarah. It's her dead friend's hand that the guy's like almost using as like a puppet, like a tool to knock on the window, which is just horrifying.
Yeah, it's upsetting to say the least.
Yeah. And he leaves her body just there. Like just was there like a table or an AC or something?
Yeah, it was like
leaves her body.
Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And at this point I did get mad at Maddie, because then we see the flashback to Sarah putting her phone in her pocket. Clearly we're trying to see her logic of, oh, she probably has her cell phone, I'll go get it, which is why she opens the window. Mm-hmm. The first thing he did was take Maddie's phone.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing.
That was like step one. You know, like
to check though.
Step one though was like take her phone away and disconnect Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Right. Also, you could probably see a phone, right? If you like just looked.
Probably. Yeah.
They're pretty big now.
It was dark, but I don't know. I think I would have checked. I think I would have checked because you know, you got to find a way to get help somehow.
Yeah.
So,
but she didn't have the phone.
Sarah did not have the phone.
Yeah. Nope. And this is when the guy sees her. So right, that's when she like tries to get back in, but she was like more than half out, climbing out the window. She's like struggling to get back in, and then I think she slams it on his hand. Right.
Yeah, she got his hand. No, it wasn't even that. I think was this the time when she like impaled his arm with the hammer?
Yeah, and she didn't she grab the crossbow?
No, not yet.
That was later.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
There's a lot of back and forth between them. It's hard to remember when exactly it all happened.
she impales his arm with the
that's right
part of the hammer. So like he's pretty injured. And then he's pissed off.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm trying to think of it because there's so much back and forth. Because by the end of it, they're both pretty hurt.
Right? Yeah. So at one
point, like instead of like going through each one, let's just say like what our favorite injury was.
So actually mine I think is the next one that comes up anyway. Sweet. At some point she gets on the roof and she like throws a flashlight into the woods so that it looks like she's run into the woods because he doesn't know she's on the roof.
Yep.
And so she tries to misdirect him. She does that a couple of times, tries to misdirect him.
Yep.
And then she tries to kind of get down from like the lattice work on the side of the house. She tries to crawl down while he's distracted by the flashlight, but she doesn't trick him. He comes up and he shoots her in the leg with the crossbow.
Yes.
Which is a pretty big injury.
Yeah.
Because it's like a serious crossbow. Like it will really injure you.
Yeah.
So she like one of my favorite scenes is when she at some point gets into her bathroom, and she's trying to treat the wound as much as she can. So she has, alcohol, like rubbing alcohol that she pours on it. But then I was thinking to myself, why no Band-Aid? It seemed like she had a fully stocked bathroom. Why not put some gauze on there? And like,
you'd think she'd have a little more,
more
in there. Yeah. Okay, I have to go back to the roof scene though. Because I think my favorite was what came right after he shot her. Because he sees her trying to climb down. So she runs back up, even with her leg. And then he shoots her and she like flashes back. Like she like drops back. Yeah, it's just full Matrix. So he doesn't know if he got her. And that's when he starts climbing up to see if she's okay, which she is. And she's like waiting. And I think she stabs him with the arrow that he had shot her with, and I think that's when she gets the crossbow as well.
Yeah, she does get the crossbow.
Amazing scene.
It is an amazing scene.
Yeah.
I think the one that like sticks with me that like I still like my hands start to like tingle when I talk about it is she's super injured and she's like essentially dying at this point.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't even know why she was. Oh, she had been outside because she hid under the house.
Yeah.
She was like hiding under the house. And at this point, she's now trying to get back in the house. And he's chasing her. And so she like gets inside and there's a sliding glass door. And she doesn't make it in time, and her hand, because she was trying to get the arrow. She dropped the arrow. Mm-hmm. So she was trying to get it because I think that was the only one that she had. Mm-hmm. And so she's reaching for the arrow, and he like closes her hand.
Oh,
and this
on
is
the
like
patio door. Yeah,
the longest scene ever. Like I feel like he just keeps banging her hand in that door, and you're like watching it get deformed,
and they show the hand, like they show you,
and the hand, like one of her fingers is all the way bent up, so it's just sticking straight up. And it's like, it's so gross. Also so amazing.
Yeah.
Now, was that right after death number 2?
Yes. I
think it was, because that was after she shot it, right?
Yes.
So we get, that's when we meet one of, I think that was the last character we meet. Mm-hmm. John?
Mm-hmm. Yes. John,
the neighbor, who just came to check in on everything.
Yeah, well, because he hasn't seen Sarah. So he's like, where's my girlfriend? She comes over to Maddie's house all the time.
Mm-hmm. I'm just probably
here.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So how do we feel about John? I feel like for me, he alternated between being like smart, that's kind of what you would do, to being one of the dumbest people in horror movie.
Again, what I wish he had done was the minute he wasn't sure, just like casually grab his phone and just incognito mode, dial 911 and just let it ring.
Agreed.
And if he doesn't like talk on it, just have it down there. Like,
as soon as he got his phone back, because I think he realized it right after he fake called in backup. He tries to take his phone, but then he asks for it back, and he gave it back to him. It's like, immediately, just 911.
Yep.
Don't say anything. Just dial it.
Well, because how that happens is as John's like at the house looking, the masked guy who's no longer masked. I will say I would have fallen for this too. He comes up with a very just authoritative, like flashlight in your face, just like a cop would do. He's like, on your knees, hands where I can see him. So John is like thinking this is a cop.
Yeah.
Right.
So he's complying, which I think I would do too. You don't know.
Totally.
But and he has a story, which it's like,
the story was bullshit.
He immediately said it to give like an excuse of like, okay, because some guy just, ran out of here, hit me, took my gun and badge or whatever. So it's like, again, it's just believable enough where it's like, if you're under a ton of pressure, I guess maybe it's like, you'd at least have to think about it.
Right.
I was just thinking, I was like, this story is so bogus. Like anyone with half a brain would be like, there is no freaking way. Like he never said his name. Oh, so then the murderer, he goes to pretend to call in backup, as a cop, and he just calls and he just says, hey, I've got a 412 at a blah, blah, blah. But he never says, hey, this is Officer so-and-so. He never gives an identification.
Yeah.
Like, clearly, this is not a cop.
John did his best.
He wasn't working on firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. I will say
again, I think he's trying to give the benefit of the doubt, but like once he does realize something is wrong, like that's got to be a scary moment to be like, all right, what do I do? Like,
okay, but again, one time where I did get a little mad at Maddie is John comes up with his own plan. Okay, maybe it's not the best plan, but he's like, oh, there's a spare key in the planter right over there. Like maybe check that so we can get in. And in the meantime, he picks up a big rock because he realizes something's wrong and he's about to hit him. But as he's about to hit him, he gets distracted by Maddie.
Yeah. And I don't know that she knows what was going on. She maybe just instantly saw him outside and then banged on the door.
But I know. It's bad timing.
This would have been the perfect moment to call 911.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Is when he bends down to check for the fake key.
Definitely.
And then you can get the big rock, but
agreed.
But you know what? John went down fighting. So we have to appreciate him for that.
No, he really did.
Mm-hmm.
And he was telling Maddie to run because he knew at that point, like his throat had been slit. Like he knew he was going to die, but he was going to try to kill the murderer as he was dying. He was like trying to choke him out.
Right.
Either way, he was trying to get Maddie to run. So big heart, just not big brain.
Yeah, may he rest in peace. Yep.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good.
I was just going to say, one of my favorite parts of this movie is when Maddie, she's already kind of explained that as a writer, she has like a gazillion endings going on in her head for her stories that she writes. So one of my favorite parts is, after John has died, she's like going through, well, I can't run because I've got this big wound. I can't outrun him because I've got this big wound. I can't wait because I'll bleed out. I can't, get help because those have all been like, those avenues have all been closed for me. I can't hide. So she's like, though the only other option is do what he won't expect. I have to kill him.
Yeah.
But I just love that scene of her envisioning, like she envisioned every single avenue that she could take and why it would or would not work.
Yeah, I love that scene.
Well,
it was just very cool.
And the way that they start this scene is they give us fake out death number 3.
Oh, that's
right.
Because it's right after John. Then we see Maddie. I think she just tries to run. I think that was what she tries
John
to do.
Because John had said run.
Yeah, John said run. So she realizes she can't load the crossbow anymore. And then she just starts running. And then the guy just catches up to her and hits her in the head with the rock. And that's it. She's dead. It's like, wait, what?
And I totally fell for it. I was like, oh shit. Did I remember this is how that happened? Like, yeah. I thought she made it. Like, yeah.
Oh, and that scene is so brutal.
Yep.
It's so good brutal. Though.
Yeah, I totally fell for it.
Yeah. It's just completely just like shocking and takes you out of it. And then I also loved then going into okay, that's not a good option. What are my
I can't run because this will happen. Right.
Yeah. It was so good. I don't know if I've seen that in another movie. I really liked the way that they did it.
I loved the way they did it. So yeah, then we get to our like final moments where she's gonna kill him.
Well, and one thing I loved, like right before that, and it was right before the finger crunching, we have our almost death that didn't happen because he's gonna kill bitch. He's gonna kill the cat. Yeah. And then she shoots him with a crossbow arrow, like to the shoulder. So it's not fatal. Yeah. But then so she ends up saving bitch, which I just thought was so sweet.
Yeah, because I literally, and I don't know if we've had this conversation one of our episodes, like I will not watch an animal die in a movie. Like, like I can watch the most gruesome deaths, but if you kill an animal, like I will not watch it. Like I'm a big documentary person, and some of the documentaries I've seen are like vile and disgusting. And there's that one that Don't Fuck with Cats. I will not watch it. I still haven't seen it because I'm like, no, I cannot. I cannot.
They don't really show that part.
I know, but the whole premise, I'm like, no, I can't.
Right.
Like,
nope. But bitch survives.
Bitch survives. And so then, like, okay, so Maddie has decided her option is to throw him off. She's going to kill him. And so at one point, he's like, again, standing in front of her door. And it says some sort of a threat. I don't remember. But he's like, I'm going to come in now. I'm going to kill you. And she sticks her finger into her wound, her leg wound, and writes in her own blood on the window, like, do it, coward. Like, it's almost kind of like Kevin McAllister, Home Alone. Like, come on, come and get me.
Yeah, it is.
It's amazing. So good.
It is. It's so good.
So I forget exactly how this part ensues. Like at one point we see him trying to break into the windows, but they're made for protection. So they're it's not like a normal window. It's the really thick ones.
Yeah.
And then she's like running upstairs and she puts her back against her bathtub so that she can see the door. And she's basically just waiting for him to come in. But she's also losing a lot of blood still. And so she's like a little woozy. So it's, we see that.
Like her vision's going in and out.
Yeah. And so like we see stuff moving behind her. But as the viewer, it's like, is that her hallucination or is that something real.
Mm-hmm.
And then I love the way this scene unfolds. Again, it's like another Matrix moment because the way they like pan out.
Mm-hmm.
But he came in through the window of the bathroom, like the tiny window above the tub. And he's like just in the bathtub. And he's like talking shit directly to her. But then he like breathes loudly on her and she feels the vibration like of that on the hairs in the back of her neck.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's holding a knife and so she turns the knife around and as he goes to stab her, she goes to stab him.
Avoiding his knife.
It's so good. And it's like in slow motion too. We like
an awesome moment. Yep. And she gets him and he just grazes her. He doesn't like seriously injure her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that moment.
So good. But he's still alive, unfortunately, right? She runs downstairs. Well, the stammers downstairs, coming in and out of it. And we see what we think is her just finally passing out, right? As he comes downstairs and sees her.
Because she's like
on the floor.
She's like going for the knives, but like she's going to go for the knife weapon, but she can't make it. Like she just like collapses.
Yeah. But as he gets close, she wakes up and she reaches for, was it like insect repellent or like bug spray?
It was a hornet spray.
Hornet spray. Mm-hmm. Yes, directly into the eyeball.
Beautiful.
So she does that, and then we had already gotten kind of a preview of this when she was cooking, where she has an extremely loud and extremely bright fire alarm that had gone off when she was cooking, so she actually had taken it off of the wall, so it was just already on her counter.
Yes.
But if you are not deaf, that sound combined with the strobe lights, and I'll talk about this more in a little bit, but I used to work at a college for the deaf for 7 years. The strobe lights for alarms for deaf people are disorienting.
Yeah.
So she like holds that up to him, so he's already got like the messed up eyes because of the hornet spray.
Hornet spray in the eye.
Got, like the sound and the lights coming at you. Totally disorienting.
So good.
It's so good. I love it.
So then they're fighting, and then somehow he actually does end up kind of getting the upper hand, right? So
they're like rolling around, and he ends up on top of her.
And he's like strangling her.
Yes.
So she's losing her breath.
And we like hear her heartbeat slow.
Yes. But that's when she reaches to the side where we see, is it a wine opener?
Right? It's a wine corkscrew, which again, is just why drinking wine is good for your health.
Yes, it could save your life.
It could actually save your life.
Yeah. Really good. She grabs the wine opener, and it is just the most satisfying stab in the neck. Because it is quick. Like, because not only does she stab him, she pulls it out.
Yep.
So it's like boom, in, out. Like it's super quick. That's when he starts just like bleeding and dies.
Yep. Collapses and dies.
But it is like the most satisfying stab that she does.
Yeah.
It's such a good. Like, I swear they sped it up because it looked so good.
Yeah. No, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And then she pulled out her friend's phone, who had still been in his pocket. She calls 911. She can't say anything, but at this point, she's just like kind of.
I mean, the alarm is going off.
The alarm's going off. They can obviously trace the location, so she just calls. And then I love that she like goes outside on her porch to like wait for the police to get there, and she just sits there, and bitch comes and joins her, and she's just petting the cat, just waiting for the police to come
while like actively bleeding out.
Yep.
And that's it. Insane.
It's so good. It's one of my favorites. There's just something about this movie that I just really love.
It is phenomenal.
Okay, so I have a question that came to my mind. So when this is we can take this depending on like whatever time in the movie, what's happened or not you want. But if you were faced with this situation, you're home alone, there's someone trying to get in who's made an obvious threat, and your Wi-Fi has been cut and your phone has been taken away. And whether you want to be injured in this situation or not, what would you do?
Okay, are we in her house? Are we in a house in the middle of the woods?
Let's say we're in her house. Like, let's say we're in her exact situation. It can be, though, that we can be hearing or deaf or whatever you want. But I'm just, if you're in that situation that she is in, what would you do?
It's a good question.
My thought was like, if I genuinely know, and I may be the wrong person to ask because, but like, if I genuinely know I'm not going to make it out, probably like what I would have done is gone and gotten my knives and gotten a couple. And then I would have like gone into either my closet or the bathroom where like I can have my back against something and can see where they're coming in. And I would just wait. Like I wouldn't, because honestly, what he wants is a game. Yeah. So if I knew, like, it's going to piss him off if he can't see where I am, like I would hide. And I would try to get there without him seeing that I got there. So I would just go in the closet and hide and just wait. And then I would, when he inevitably opens the door, I would like try my fucking best. But I don't know. Like, just I don't know that I would I wouldn't put up that much of a fight. Again, I also have like serious depression, so I'm probably the wrong person to ask.
It's fine. It's fine.
I mean, that's a good effort that you're putting in.
I mean, you're still going out fighting. That's
right. I don't just say, "Oh, thank God, finally," and let him in.
Come on in.
Like, what if you did that instead? What if you were like, "Oh my God, this makes it so much easier. Come on in."
You know what? Just come on. Yeah, I mean, clearly he liked the game. So maybe that would just throw him off so much.
And he'd be like, wait, are you fucking with me? No, man, come on.
No, come on in. I think for me, assuming I'm in her house, I'm in like kind of like the middle of the woods. Like, sorry, Smokey the Bear, but I usually keep a lot of liquor in my house. I think you just like try to start a forest fire.
Good idea.
Right? Like just like vodka, cloth, lighter, and throw them into the forest.
Good idea.
Until you start like a giant fire, because they have to respond eventually, right? And if you see a giant fire, like he would know that someone would respond.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, the risk is like lighting the house on fire. So I think this is a big risk situation. Also, you'd start a forest fire. But I think like if it's like, well, there's no other options. You can't call 911, right? Like fire is a good signal.
Oh my God, that's genius.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I think that would be mine.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what I would do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would try to run kind of like she did. Like I would try a distraction. But let's assume, I've got the leg injury and I'm not going to be able to outrun him.
Yeah. Also, crunchy leaves. Crunchy leaves made it real. I think because she tries running at the very, very beginning, but he can hear her.
Right. Right. So I think I would do where I would gather up a bunch of supplies to survive and or fight and do like a combo of I'm trying to hide and just wait it out. But also if he comes in, I'll have as much things as I possibly can to, defend myself. And I think I would also do where she did this at one point. She wrote in her laptop a description of the guy.
Yes.
Right. So I would write down somewhere where he couldn't get it. Cause I'm guessing, she has a password to get into her laptop. I think they even showed her using it once. So I would do that so that like the authorities could know what happened if I didn't make it.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was really smart. Like when they showed it, I was like, oh, I never would have thought of that. And that's so smart that she realizes, doesn't know if she's going to make it. Let's at least help them catch him.
Right. Right. But yeah, I like that forest fire idea.
Just start a giant fire.
I love it.
Love it.
I don't recommend this. I'm like, as a last resort though, I think that's a good option.
I do too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't think we've talked about what we're sipping on
Oh,
yet.
we haven't.
Should we get into that?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I chose our drink for this episode, and I was trying to just kind of think, of a drink. I was honestly having kind of a hard time trying to find a drink for this one. And so I went to the books. I had this tiny little book set that's called the Mini Bar, and it just has it separated. Like each book has a different alcohol. So it'll be like one book on tequila and one book on champagne, and just has a bunch of different cocktails. So I just kind of went through it and tried to see what stood out. And we ended up going with the Hemingway Daiquiri. I figure she's an author, why not Hemingway? And honestly, for some reason, this movie did give me rum energy for the cocktail. I can't explain it, but it gave me rum.
Totally.
And didn't Hemingway live in a cabin in the woods? Didn't he?
Oh, did he?
I think so.
I see that.
Confusing him with someone else. I don't know.
No, I think so.
I see it. But I feel like I should read the little description that's in the book for this cocktail, because I loved it. And I really wish we would have done this before I drank so much of this, because now I have to read. Okay, here's the description for this drink. With his prodigious constitution for drinking and then writing about it, Ernest Hemingway shows up frequently in cocktail mythology, and none perhaps more famously than this drink, the Hemingway Daiquiri. El Floridita, a Havana bar frequented by the author in the 1920s, served Hemingway these doctored-up daiquiris, made unique by the maraschino liqueur, and notable for the lack of simple syrup, thought to be because Hemingway was diabetic. He reportedly could pack away tens of these at a time, ordering doubles, or what would come to be known as Papa Doble in deference.
Oh my gosh.
Hey.
And I have to say, I guess I can say what's in the drink. You have white rum, maraschino liqueur, lime juice, and grapefruit juice. Ooh. And then you can garnish with a lime wheel. I am drinking it. I swear this drink is spicy. Is the only way I can describe it. Maybe it's the maraschino liqueur plus the rum.
Yeah.
It's really strong. The idea that anyone could have more than two of these is shocking.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. I was just feeling in the mood for a mocktail today. So I was feeling like that's the version I wanted to go with. So I'm probably not drinking the mocktail that we'll post.
This could just be the one that we post.
Or this could be the one. So what I decided to do is I have maraschino cherry juice. So I did a half ounce of maraschino cherry juice, a half ounce of lime juice, and I happen to have the pamplemousse or the grapefruit LaCroix on hand. So I just did that, and then I topped it with grapefruit LaCroix, and it's pretty good.
Oh, that actually sounds kind of good.
It's simple, but it's tasty. I feel like I put maybe a little more lime than I normally would prefer. Like it tastes very limey. I don't love a ton of sweet stuff. So I would maybe just add either a little less lime or a little more maraschino cherry juice.
Okay.
Yeah, just got to do it to taste,
But it's also a really pretty drink. Like it is really
pretty.
That is a beautiful color.
Yeah.
It's like a pink orange-ish.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, it's a really pretty. Nice color.
Yes.
But yeah, this drink is really strong.
Love it.
Amazing.
Yes. I feel very proud to have pronounced what I think was all of those words correctly.
You did
I think so.
very well with that. So well done.
I haven't had a cocktail at all today, and I couldn't pronounce maraschino earlier. So
we're all just doing our best, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, on that note, is it time for some psych? I'm kind of excited for your psych for this episode.
Let's do some psych. Yeah.
Yeah. And just remember, she is not a real doctor, but it's okay because these are not real people.
Just a movie.
It's just a movie. Okay. So I've got two kind of main things I want to talk about psych related. And it's not really any sort of diagnoses I'm getting into. Yeah. It's more just the psychology of different styles of people. So I actually, and just like I'm no doctor, I am also no expert on deaf culture, on deaf population signing. I was involved in a deaf community for a little over 7 years. I was fluent in ASL. I worked for one of the 3 biggest deaf colleges in our country. I worked at the National Technical Institute for the Deaf,
Nice.
within Rochester Institute of Technology, so NTID. So it was kind of fun to be able to like go into this movie and like know, okay, I'm going to talk about the psychology of, people who are deaf and deaf culture. I will say, when I first watched this movie, I did not that I got this movie illegally, because I totally got it legally.
Mm-hmm.
But the version I was watching didn't instantly have any subtitles on for Maddie, and it took me a few minutes to realize that. So when she was first talking to her friend Sarah, she was, talking about her book or talking about trying to cook, and I was following it. But then I was like, how would anyone who doesn't know ASL be able to follow along with this movie? They wouldn't. And then I was like, oh shoot, I need subtitles.
So
it was kind of fun. So the signing, to me, again, a non-deaf person, but someone who was fluent in ASL, the signing was on point. It's
nice.
It was real. So let's talk about people who are deaf. So it's not like just speaking another language. So people who are deaf, especially people who are what we call like big D or capital D deaf, it's a whole other culture. So American Sign Language is not just speaking English, but with your fingers. It's like the grammar, the syntax, the order, everything about it is different. It's not signed English. It's its own like language and order. So because like language and culture are they're inherently intertwined, right? One kind of feeds the other one. They feed each other. So deaf culture is kind of influenced by ASL, but also the reverse.
Yeah, makes sense.
So one of the biggest things about deaf culture, and people who belong to that community, will say deafness is not a disability. A lot of times people will think it is, like it's something that needs to be fixed. It's something that's wrong with you, and that is not the case. So, big D deaf people will say, well, no, we are in the language minority. And so we have our own identity, but don't fix me. I love being deaf. I want to be deaf. And it's a huge part of their identity and their community. Like sometimes they'll refer to it as, it's not that I have a hearing loss, I've gained deafness, which is like a really cool way to look at it.
Yeah.
This is not all deaf people. And so one of the things that we'll get into when we talk about Maddie and what's going on with her and feeling, she mentioned several times, that she's isolated, is she wasn't born deaf. And my guess would be most people in her life are not part of the deaf culture. So it was probably this very just jarring and isolating thing. Because already that happens, but a lot of times it happens when people are younger. So like even people born deaf, most deaf children are not born to deaf parents. So like the culture is something that you're not born into, so you're not taught by your parents, but it's something that like you kind of cultivate, you kind of find and get taught by people that are established in it, and that the people in your life have to learn too. So let's see. So there's certain norms that happen in deaf culture. So things that hearing people initially don't get. So I can fully admit, when I was a new hearing person in deaf culture, I was like, why do deaf people stand in the hallway and they stand across the hallway and it's really awkward for me to try to get around them? Well, they do that because if you're hearing and someone is like having a conversation or walking by you, you can kind of like hear that. But if you're deaf and you're involved in a conversation, but like I don't know, Joe, who you've been wanting to talk to for a while, is in the area and walking by. If he doesn't walk right through your path, you're not going to know he's there and be like, oh, hey, Joe, I needed to talk to you about something, right? Like, it's just a way for them to be able to know what's going on. So like they will place themselves in certain areas to be able to like see what's going on. It makes sense.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One thing that would happen at the college that I was at was if you were a hearing person, you were required to learn as much ASL as you could.
I mean, yeah.
Even if you didn't become good at it, you had to. And if you were in a public space, even if I, a hearing person, was talking to another hearing person, even if we were both mediocre or bad at signing, you had to sign.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise it's considered like kind of like whispering around someone behind their back. Mm-hmm. Like, so it's just the polite, culturally acceptable thing to do. Like getting attention is kind of an interesting thing in deaf culture. Like touch is allowed. You're allowed to do that. You can tap someone on the shoulder. And one thing, which again, I don't mean to like say this in a rude way, but a lot of the people I would work with would talk about and joke around about deaf standard time. So sometimes people that are deaf, so when you're having a conversation in ASL, a lot more details goes into things, and sometimes the conversations take a lot longer. So like whether that means that then you're late to your next appointment, or you say the meeting's going to end at 3, but it really goes till 3:30 because it just things take a little bit longer. So people would joke around about like deaf standard time.
That's funny.
And then like another example of things would be like maintaining eye contact. So say you're talking to a deaf person and your phone rings, even just looking at your phone when it rings is really rude, because eye contact is such a huge part of the communication you have. So really what you'd have to do is you'd have to say, you'd have to tell them, hey, my phone's going off, and then you're allowed to look. But just like even a quick little glance at your phone, they can't hear it ringing. So they think all of a sudden you're just not interested.
Like looking away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be really hard to not, especially, I'm one of the smartwatch people. So like all notifications, like not only just, is my phone going to buzz, but like my watch, like my wrist, and like that instinct of like every time it buzzes, I, look down to check on it. So that'd be like a hard habit to kick.
Yeah. It takes a while to get used to.
Yeah.
And so like, I love that you mentioned and you talked about, your notification on your watch. That is one beef I had with this movie. When Maddie's friend Sarah comes up to her door and she's like banging on her door, a deaf person would have a doorbell that's going to light up, and it would be at your doors. So it's kind of like her fire alarm that, she said she had it set to so loud so she could feel the vibrations. Alarm clocks, doorbells, it's not just going to be a door with no bell. It would be one that would light the strobes, and Maddie would know what that is. So it bothered me that was not on her door.
Yeah. Well, maybe it was like, I feel like the whole point of the movie was like, this was a new change, right? To go cabin in the woods.
Yeah.
And most houses don't come standard with that. Whereas like the alarm, you could tell was like she installed as a bonus. So maybe I'll make an excuse for them.
Okay.
Maybe she just hadn't gotten to it yet.
Okay. Okay. But they maybe should have put that disclaimer in there, because that really, I was like, there's no way.
You're in the middle of the woods. Like, who's going to come knocking?
Right.
Also, it was not her main door.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. That was supposed to be like her side.
Yeah, that was like
door.
the side kitchen door.
I just think you'd have them at all the doors.
I think that's a fair criticism.
Yeah. Because they'll have things like pillows that vibrate, like for your alarm clock, or like lights sometimes will happen. But like I have some deaf friends who would talk about like, they would take their cochlear implant or their hearing aid out if they wanted really good sleep, because then no one could disturb them.
Yeah.
Like, so it's just like things like that you don't really think about, but just have to be a little bit different. So some of the psychology of what being deaf might impact you. So there's certain ways that you might like identify yourself. So you might identify yourself as what we were talking about, deaf culture, like that big D, capital D, deaf, which is, you fully embrace the deaf community, ASL, your deafness is not a disability, it's your identity. Versus hearing culture, which, you can be a hearing person that is still part of the deaf community, deaf culture. But hearing culture is more like that's who you identify with.
Yeah.
So I work in the schools. So a lot of times that happens if there is a child that's deaf, but then is mainstreamed, all of their friends can hear. They get accommodations in school, but a lot of times they're not like really exposed to deaf culture. But that can be really isolating.
Yeah.
Because you've got all these barriers. So say you're in, a mainstream school and yeah, you've got an interpreter or closed captioning, but then anytime you want to talk to a friend, it's kind of through an interpreter. It just kind of it isolates you a bit.
Yeah.
Bicultural would be that you fit in with the hearing world and the deaf world. But then marginal is where you're kind of neither. Like you don't really belong to either one.
Well, and I mentioned it earlier how the consultant recommended they change Maddie from being born deaf to having it be like a latent deaf. And part of the reason she recommended that was to kind of add to, I mean, she is physically isolated, right? She goes to a cabin in the woods, but to add to the isolation part of her not being fully part of either community, she grew up, clearly her family is hearing, right? But also having it be latent, making her not fully part of the deaf community either, at least from we saw in the movie, right? Everyone around her is hearing. So I know that was a big part of why the consultant recommended it, was to kind of add to another layer of isolation that Maddie's character would be feeling.
Yeah. Oh, totally. That's exactly what I was going to talk about with Maddie, is that I feel that she's maybe either a bit bicultural or more marginal, because it happened when she was 13. She even makes some comment about she maybe wants to date a deaf man or go on a deaf dating site. And I feel like if that's what's going on with her, that can lead to some low self-esteem. And you see her talking about, I'm terrible at writing and I'll never be good enough, and feelings of isolation. And I think that could have resulted of exactly when she lost her hearing. While it seems her friends and family are really supportive, they're learning sign. Her sister seemed pretty good at it. This probably took time. So if she wasn't, exposed to individuals that were part of the deaf community and culture, even if she was, when she first loses her hearing, she couldn't communicate with them. She's now struggling to communicate with her friends and family. And that can just be a difficulty of people that are deaf, is, the hearing majority might not understand you or the problems you're going through. If you're growing up in a predominantly hearing world, and just being included. So if all of Maddie's family is hearing, and especially I'm guessing her early on, she goes to Thanksgiving, everyone's chit-chatting around and she's just kind of like, okay, like it would be very isolating. So, yeah. What else do I have to talk about with deaf culture? Not really much else about deaf culture.
Okay, well, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So it's funny because we were actually talking about something very closely related this weekend. We went camping, and Laura, you were mentioning that you like wear an eye mask and have earplugs. And I was saying, so this is, if you are a new listener or don't know me, I have a severe anxiety disorder and I cannot do either of those things, like camping or at home. Like not being able to hear or not being able to see, like causes me severe panic. So like if I were to go deaf or to go blind, I don't know what I would, like I don't know what I would do. Like that would cause me so much distress. So like, do people in the deaf community that lost their hearing later in life have that type of anxiety more commonly? Like,
yeah. Yeah, well, and that's a conversation that has happened with people I know where especially if you lose your hearing later in life, almost kind of rejecting that deaf culture, and then you kind of become marginalized where you're not no longer part of the hearing world, but you're not like that deaf culture, which takes time. I mean, I was in that community for 7 years, and I'm still obviously I'm not an expert, where it is hard because you don't really identify with either.
Mhm.
So finding just people to relate to be able to support you with it is super, super hard.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean, studies have been showing too, like where a lot of difficulties that happen with people that are deaf are if, as you know, if you're born deaf and your family doesn't embrace your deafness, so maybe discourages ASL, which used to be a thing.
Oh my
That used to be
gosh.
a thing where ASL was like it was not forbidden, but well, maybe forbidden in some places, but discouraged because,
Mhm.
oh, you should fit into the hearing world and read lips, and that's or get a cochlear implant.
Mhm.
That's never foolproof. Read lips only get so far, and
Yeah.
cochlear implants, it's not like hearing. It's not like it makes you hear. It
Mhm.
makes you be able to perceive sounds, but it's not like a hearing person hears.
Yeah.
Um, and so that leads to like behavioral problems and language deficiencies in children if they're not able to sign versus like if parents learn sign and whether they're deaf or not, deaf parents to deaf babies or, hearing parents that sign to deaf babies, their language development is like equal and equivalent to what happens with hearing babies to hearing parents.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Um, and adults can learn language as well, but then there's that identity piece that comes into it that they really
Mhm.
will struggle with. And yeah, I would think also anxiety too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if one of your things to cope with anxiety is to be able to, you know, hear what's happening or see what's happening and that's taken away from you, you'd have to relearn something else.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um so another thing I forgot to mention too was another thing that happens with deaf culture is like I was saying, the it's not signed English. It's very different. So there's things like classifiers where you kind of use your hands and you label what your hand is and then use it in a story. So it's almost like you set up your hand. I'm not describing this very well. Like say for example, I was going to talk about, a man went to the store. You would say, okay, here's a man, Tony, and you would sign Tony, and then you would put up your finger, and then now your finger becomes Tony. So
Mm.
your finger is
Mhm.
never normally like this guy named Tony, but like in
Yeah.
your story, you set that up as a classifier, and then like you have Tony do things like in your story, which is just really cool.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Is that not the
I
name?
it is. I didn't mean
Okay.
to.
I love that you gave your finger the name Tony, like in
The
The
Shining.
It was
Shining.
I
That
shiny.
do
was
not mean to. It
amazing.
was it was a horror movie crossover slip.
Amazing.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. But then you also get things like sign names. And so sign names are cool because you can finger spell out proper names of things, but that takes a long time. So usually you're
Yeah.
not going to finger spell out your whole name. So if you're in the deaf community, you can get a sign name, but what's really interesting is you don't give that to yourself. Especially
Mhm.
if you're a hearing person, you don't you don't give yourself a sign name. A deaf person has to give you the name. Or like
Oh.
a group
Mhm.
of get deaf people like somehow will start referring to you as that.
Mhm.
Or like they'll come up with the name for you. So it took me like I think it took me 3 years before I was given my sign name. So I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm finally accepted."
You did it.
Yeah. Yeah, so mine is L, the
Mhm.
first letter of my first name, and then kind of down your face, like along where
Mhm.
your hairline is, just because I have like long, pretty hair. So that was my sign
Nice.
name. Yeah. Cool. So it's usually like something to do with you. Like some people I know have one that's kind of near their eyes because, you know, they wear glasses a lot or like they have a big nose. That's the other thing is sometimes deaf people can be a little bit more blunt than hearing people. So hearing people might perceive it rude, but deaf people are like, well, no, it's just an obvious thing. So we're going to talk about it. And so it's just something that like has to be like, you just have to get a little bit used to it and just realize this is deaf culture. So I need to just go with it and learn it and, you know, figure it out. So yeah. So that's all I have about deaf culture and the psychology that goes behind that.
I love it.
I feel like that was a little bit more sociology and but I feel like it's all related.
Movie. Yeah. Well, and you have so much experience with it that I feel like just kind of hearing about your experience. Yeah. You know.
No, I think that was fascinating.
And like your language and your culture shapes your psychology, and it's all intertwined. You can't separate it out.
It is. Agreed.
Okay. The only other thing I thought about was screaming.
Oh,
because an interesting thing about this movie and something that really pisses off our villain is that she can't scream and she doesn't scream. And he even makes some comment. I think that's actually what gets him caught when he's behind her in the bathtub. Is he's like, I bet I can do something to get you to make you scream, huh? And then like him going, huh, like she feels that. So I found a few different articles, either from like National Geographic or Psychology Today or something, and it talks about there's 6 different screams that us as humans can identify as unique.
Oh, okay.
So 3 of them will signal alarm to the person hearing the scream: pain, anger, and fear. And they sound distinctly different.
Yeah, I get that.
3 of them are non-alarm reasons for screaming: joy, pleasure, passion, or sadness and grief.
Yeah.
What's really interesting is you think, okay, why do people scream? Like typically you think biologically, you know, why have we been programmed to scream?
Yeah.
You would think like, okay, well, it's for the alarm, right? It's like to warn people or to signal danger. But there's been studies where people recognize the joy scream and the non-alarm scream. They're able to recognize and pick that one out easiest and quickest. Like that's the one that like their brain can hone in on faster than a fear scream and like a pain scream.
Oh, that's so weird.
So they kind of theorize that it's because it has a higher relevance in human socio-biological interactions. But I don't know. I just thought that was so weird.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Like you think as humans, we'd come up with a better alarm, you know?
Right.
That we could react to.
Like, does that mean if something's going on, you should scream with joy to get someone's attention versus with fear? Maybe so. I don't know.
I'll have to experiment with that.
Yeah.
Just at the mall, just scream.
Just scream with joy.
See what happens.
Yeah. So what goes on in your brain when you scream? So normally when you just hear something, your brain it tries to make sense of the sounds. Like, you know, who's it coming from? Like, what are identity or qualifications or characteristics of the speaker? What do they need? What's their tone? But screams, they don't follow that same kind of logical route. They more impact like your amygdala. That's like that base part of your brain. That's that like fear signal stem of your brain. You know, you have to react. It's more that fear processing place. So they just trigger that heightened awareness.
Yeah.
No matter what their intended purposes is. And so I just feel like because, there was one study where they interviewed couples and couples that were able to express anger versus kind of like being passive aggressive, even if it included screaming at each other, they rated having a higher relational satisfaction.
Interesting.
Because they were able to express anger, express conflict. So this is not necessarily a diagnosis, but my theory as to what's going on with our villain is that he grew up in a dysfunctional house. Screaming was the only way love or emotion or connection was shown. And so I feel in his brain, he got this twisted sense of, I need to hear the screams because that's how I can connect.
Yeah.
Even if it's to the people I'm killing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that's why he just got so frustrated with Maddie, because she was not going to give him that.
Yeah.
She was not going to play that game.
I like this theory on our killer.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
And there's been a study that I was kind of looking at where they exposed rats to different noises. And so one group of rats was exposed to white noise and one was exposed to screaming. And interestingly enough, acute screaming, yes, if you're exposed to that, yes, it's going to heighten your stress hormone, but it increases the rat's performances, like in the maze. So versus the white noise, so the exposure to the screaming had them do better. And I almost think maybe that's why our killer got messed up, because he didn't have that heightened stress and like screaming sensory input to like get him like fired up and good. So he like slipped up a bit. He was disarmed by Maddie's silence.
So while I'm at work, instead of listening to white noise, I should just listen to screaming.
Just
Put a soundtrack of screaming on.
Someone yell at you.
I think my coworkers are gonna love this. Yeah.
Just
I'm gonna try it out.
Speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, no headphones. No. It's the whole office that gets
It's more
this.
stressful that way if you know other people can hear.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Love it.
So, yeah, so that's why I think psychologically our villain met his downfall.
I love this theory.
I do too.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So there's my
well done.
Nice. This is a good dive. So instead of this time in history, this movie, I had a bunch of miscellaneous questions, not questions really related to the movie, just questions that I wrote down while watching the movie, and then I Googled them. So I'm just going to share the questions and answers that I found.
I love this.
So the first one I had is, in an emergency, could you drive a car in all flats?
I also thought the same thing and wondered.
Punctures all four tires. And it's like, well, like, could you though? The answer is no, please don't do that. You will wreck your car. Even in an emergency, you should just pull over to the side. But especially because she's in the middle of the woods and there were a bunch of crunchy leaves everywhere, with them fully deflated, you would get absolutely no traction. Because eventually it would turn so much that the rubber would just kind of fall off, you know, like you would just kind of get rid of the rubber. And then you're in the forest, mud, leaves, etc.
Right.
In that situation, you don't want to be in a car.
Got it.
Okay.
Even if you have, because they do sell run flat tires, so they stay inflated longer. And you can usually go up to 50 miles an hour, like driving safely on them, and go up to 50 miles. Like distance wise. But again, we know she's in the middle of the woods. So it's like, I don't know if 50 miles would be enough. You know?
Maybe not.
To get you somewhere safe. So the car was a bad option.
Got it.
It's good that she didn't pursue that.
I also wonder if he had a car hidden somewhere. Because maybe she would have been able to get a little bit, but maybe he had his car stashed away and he'd just follow her, catch right up to her.
Yeah. I thought that.
Yeah. So I don't know. I was just curious. The second one is, he broke that car window too easily. How hard is it to break a car window? The answer is very. It's more like when he broke the he didn't even break it, when he attempted to break the patio door, because it should all be tempered glass. So it takes about 60 pounds of force to break glass, which I don't think you could do with one elbow.
If you ladies do not, or our listeners, you should get one of those tools that breaks windows.
Yes.
I have one in my glove box. So you should get one and put it in your car.
Yeah.
Because do those tools work like I'm thinking my front windshield has had a very large crack in it for about 1.5 years. Um, so I feel like that would break easier because it's already got the crack. Is that
Yeah.
what the window breakers do? Like they kind of put a flaw in the glass that then allows it to break, or?
Well, so the way that it works is, I say like it requires 60 pounds of force.
Okay.
And the smaller the object that you use to hit it, the easier it's going to be to apply that amount of force. So usually those window breaker things, like they have like a really small pointy end.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't take as much effort for you to just like with your arm break it.
There was just a story yesterday about a guy that accidentally locked his baby in the car.
Mm-hmm.
And someone that was in the same parking lot had one of those tools and was able to come and break his window. So it also works from the outside to get in a car. Because it was
so
like over 100 degrees that day. And like, even though it was only a few minutes, like you could see the baby was already getting red. Like,
that's terrifying.
Oh, it's so scary. Okay, well, I'm adding that to my list to buy.
Yeah. Do you guys remember, like, I feel like this was years ago, but it was like when that just kept happening, that people kept leaving their kids in the car. And like, I specifically remember these ads and stuff, just like PSAs being like, so just like make sure to keep something important in the car, so you don't lock your baby in. And it's like more important than your baby.
Right. Right.
It's actually sad how often that happens. And
because
like,
it is so sad.
Because you're so distracted. And like, most often it's when the other parent, it's when you break routine. So like if dad doesn't usually take baby, but he has to that day because mom has an appointment or something, it's like when that kind of thing happens. So they actually now suggest that like if you're in that situation where you're breaking routine, that you just take your left shoe off and put it on the floor in front of the car seat, because then first thing when you step out of your car, you'll know your shoe is gone. And you remember that it's with baby.
Yeah.
Oh, that's smart.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
PSA.
also, my car tells me to look in the back seat every time I get out of it. Do your cars do that?
Well, I don't have a smart car, so no.
Well, and I think I'm trying to think of when it does it. If under certain like situations, I think if someone's in the car, if you close the door, it'll just unlock. So you can't like lock your keys in my car or anything. It just unlocks.
Yeah,
so
mine's
maybe,
just like
maybe newer cars.
Every time I turn it off, it just says, reminder, look in the back seat.
Yeah.
So
maybe it's because of that.
Yeah. But again, if that becomes a habitual thing where you are always seeing that reminder, at a certain point, it's going to stop having the effect. Like I don't look in the back seat because I know there's no baby there.
Yep. Yeah. And it almost always happens, not all, but almost always when it's a rear facing car seat. So you don't actually see the baby. You just see the car seat.
Oh, that makes sense.
If that's always in your car,
you
just
don't know.
And if the baby's
not different.
Asleep,
makes sense.
Yep.
Huh. Okay. Well, PSA.
Yeah.
Okay. My other question was, what are you supposed to do if you get stabbed in the leg or crossbowed in the leg? Because I was curious about her first aid.
Right.
Yes.
Like I was like, is that because originally my thought was even when she gets to the bathroom, she takes her pants off, and I was even curious, like, well, wouldn't the skinny jeans, because she was wearing really tight skinny jeans, like, wouldn't that almost help? Like, put the pressure on. So I looked it up. If it's not a bad stab wound, clots usually form in 10 minutes, I think is what I saw. So if you can just kind of like cover it and it stops bleeding, then you should be okay. In this case, it wasn't that. So according to onlinefirstaid.com, if you're bleeding and it's pulsating out, which I think was the case for Maddie, because it like keeps coming out, that's when a tourniquet would be used, which she kind of does. She kind of wraps something around. I don't think it was tight enough though. If you ever need to tie a tourniquet, make sure it's above wherever the cut is, like by a few centimeters. And then you need to get something. And the video I saw, they use scissors. So like you tie it and then you put the scissors through it and then you turn it. So you have to turn the tourniquet. So it gets nice and tight, and then tie it around one more time so it actually stays tight, which I don't think she did. I think that would have helped her.
Well, yeah, because she took off her pants, poured the alcohol on, and then just put the pants back on, and then she tied the
Yeah.
rope thing around. But yeah, the rope wasn't, or the robe tie wasn't thick enough. I don't feel like to do much
No.
good. I will say though, another thing I thought about this movie while watching it was I really loved her style. I liked her jeans, her like purple, like cozy looking sweater, and her jacket. I was like, that is so an outfit I would wear.
I literally had that thought when she put the jacket on. I was like, oh my God, Laura would wear that exact thing.
I was like, really,
so
where
funny.
did she get the jacket?
I know.
The jacket, the jeans, the whole thing. I loved her whole
Get
thing.
the fit.
Yeah. No, that was not the point of the movie.
My other question, and I guess we didn't really talk about this scene, but my other question was, how do you load a crossbow? Because we see her in the bathroom struggling to get it loaded.
I would on that as well.
Love to be your FBI agent, being like, "What's happening,
dear NSA agent? This is for work."
Yeah, that guy.
Okay,
yes, it's for work.
Before you tell us the answer, the other beef I had with this movie is she's like ripping the shit, like shredding her hands trying to like pull the wire, and I was just thinking, you have robes and towels right there, put that around so you have a thicker, softer thing to grab so you can get more pull. And it really bothered me that she didn't do that, but again, she wasn't thinking. She lost a lot of blood.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So step one is read your user manual, because different crossbows operate differently. But in general, you put your foot in the stirrup, which we kind of saw when he did, and I think she figured out that your foot goes there. And then you should never use your hand. There's no way you're ever going to be able to get it on your own. So it's kind of shocking that she was able to load one. I don't think you'd be able to. Usually you need a caulking device, which
I always need a caulking device.
Yeah, you do.
Usually it's like a little rope. So it's like a tiny rope that has little handles on it that you would loop around and then use that to pull as you're pressing your foot down on it. Okay. So even if she had just grabbed a towel or something and then just looped it and pulled with the rope, I mean, she also, I think, would have needed to like stand up to help. Or some like newer, nicer crossbows even have a little crank. So you can just crank it.
Okay.
I also thought it was interesting. Apparently the bows, which they're not called bows, they're called bolts for crossbows. They're usually made of metal. And in this movie, they was definitely made of wood, because we see him snap.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it was like an old-fashioned one.
Yeah. So I do think they sell them. It does exist, but I guess usually it's made of metal.
Interesting.
So yeah, RIP to my search history. Anyway, the last question I had was in the movie when John talks to the guy, he mentions, oh, Maddie wouldn't have been able to make the 911 call because she's deaf and mute. So I was wondering, how would you call 911? You can text 911. They do prefer a call. The kind of slogan I saw was call if you can, text if you can't. So there is the option to text 911 if you can make a phone call. I do think they will do FaceTime as well, because she originally goes to FaceTime to do emergency services. So I do think there's a FaceTime option. Also, I mean, I think if you just dial 911 and say nothing,
they're going to know.
They're going to send an officer, like if you just dial it and leave it, you can track your location. But yeah, I was just curious. So I looked it up.
Yeah, it's so interesting how technology has changed too, because it used to be, for people that were deaf, they'd have to, it used to be this thing called TTY where you're like typing things. And then it was like video relay services. And now with like FaceTime, it's, there's a ton of options.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how it's become so much more accessible. That's so awesome.
Yeah, I do think this is newer, and it's like, obviously if you can call, that's what they prefer, so that way people who need to use the text option can use that. But yeah, I thought that was cool. Yeah, it's a lot of new changes with calling 911.
I thought almost the exact same questions during the movie, so I love that.
Okay, yeah, those were all the questions I had, but I had so many that I was like, you know what? I think I'm just screw my search history. I'm going to find the answer.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
All right, so here on Spooky Sips, we don't give stars, we give sips. So ladies, out of 5 stars, how many sips do you give this movie?
Well, we've all kind of mentioned how much we love this movie. There, as we've discussed, I have a few beefs with it, and I have a few things where I was like, that was obviously a goof, something I wouldn't have done, but I loved the terror in this movie. I loved the acting. I loved the sound in it. So it's one that I think is truly amazing. So I'm giving it 4.5 sips.
Nice. Yeah.
Very, very good one. Not perfect, but very, very good.
Yeah. I'm kind of right in the same. I love this movie so much. It is one of the few movies that I've actually watched multiple times because I just really enjoyed it. Also, if you want a movie to watch with someone who doesn't love spooky movies, I think this is a good one because Matt watched this one with me and enjoyed it. So I think this is a good, like, if you're trying to like introduce someone into horror movies and you don't want to go, too deep, I think this is a good one to share with other people. But I'm the same. I'm 4.5 out of 5.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to do something for the first time. I'm going to give 2 ratings. I'm going to tell you why. I think there are different categories of spooky movies. So as a general rating, just, what do I think of this movie? I completely agree. I give it a 4.5 because it's nearly perfect to me. But then I'm going to break it into a subcategory of slasher films because I feel like this would fall into the slasher film.
Absolutely.
And out in that category, I have to give it a perfect 5.
Really?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, like in the slasher category, to me, it is the best slasher I have seen.
Yeah.
And it's perfect for a slasher movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love it.
Okay. Yeah.
It is such a good slasher movie. I mean, you just think of all the deaths and how great they are for a slasher. Yeah, absolutely.
And just the energy and the tension, the entire movie. I feel like it's a perfect slasher.
Yeah. And I love that Maddie isn't dumb. Like it is a real like chase between the two of them.
Exactly.
So I think that makes it better. Yeah. Where it's like, yes, it doesn't have a ton of deaths, but the ones that we get are good.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yep.
And she saves bitch. So gotta love it.
They're both our final ladies.
Yeah. Yeah, they are our final ladies.
So good. All right, so next time on Spooky Sips, we are getting ready for the spooky season and watching Trick or Treat. If you haven't seen it yet, get watching and get sipping. We'll see you next time on Spooky Sips. Okay, bye.
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 Thank you for listening to Spooky Sips. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're listening. To stay up to date on all the spooky things we're up to, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at spookysips_podcast. And if you want to help support the podcast, consider buying us a coffee or really a cocktail. We are completely independent, so every little bit goes a long way to keeping our podcast running and improving. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.